Hi there, how's everybody doing? Sergio Size back at the Real Estate Hedgehog. It's been a little while for me. I know that Sam did a great job putting a video together last week, which I looked at and I'm thinking, man, that's Sam. He does a good job. I hope he doesn't like all of a sudden start doing these without me. So I had to come back. Sam, how are you doing?
I'm good, man. We're just missing you. So I was itching to put something out. I've been meaning to, I got to put something, but I don't want to put something without him. So I did that one. I figured it would kind of remind you we got to get back on the air. So I'm glad we're
Oh,
back.
absolutely. I'm so glad you did that. And yeah, we're Sam and I have been talking about getting back into doing these on a weekly basis and putting them on YouTube. And I've talked to a lot of folks, a lot of friends have been asking me, hey, how come you guys aren't doing these YouTube videos anymore? So they are informative, and I think that the best part of the things that Sam and I put out is that we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly that we experience in this world of investing. And thank God there's more good than bad and ugly. But anyways, so what I wanted to discuss today is I was telling Sam a little while ago that last week I was watching a YouTube video put out by a guy named Ken McElroy. Ken is a extremely successful real estate investor. If you don't follow him, you should look him up on YouTube. He puts out some really good material. But he talked about his 5 rules to follow when investing. So I was talking to Sam about how we could talk about these things because I think they're critical. What I love about rules is that they kind of act as guideposts or guidelines, I should say. So that tells you, you know what, I'm not doing this, or I'm not doing that, I'm not following this rule. And if you do follow it, it keeps you from going off the deep end. And this way you can stay on the straight and narrow. So here are the 5 rules. I'm going to give them to you right now. But Sam and I are going to talk about the first 2, and then next week we'll cover the last 3. So the 5 rules are: number 1, understand the deal. And I think that's critical, and we'll be talking about that. Number 2 is leverage. How and why to use leverage. Number 3 is compounding, the magic of compounding. Number 4 is diversification within the real estate world and also within your investments, various investments. And then of course, holding, to hold on to property, because that's where generational wealth can be built. You hold on to property, and that doesn't mean you don't sell property. It just means that you could either hold on to it for the long run, or you hold on to it and then sell it to upgrade, but you're constantly being invested. So with that as an introduction, let's talk a little bit about the importance of understanding the deal. And point number 1 is never invest in anything you do not understand. And so here's something that I want to ask Sam, because I think Sam has done a tremendous job over the last 2 or 3 years. Sam, when you first got into real estate, how well did you really understand real estate?
I didn't understand anything about real estate, really. It all started off with just someone telling me, hey, buy it. If you can afford to keep it. Once you pay it off, it's all free and clear, and it's all profit, right? Because I want to pay it off as fast as I could. I was paying down the mortgage with extra money in hopes I can pay it off. But I just didn't understand all the different concepts of real estate like I do now. But like anything else, we all grow as we experience more. And I'm still growing. There's still a lot to learn. And it seems like every time I take a corner or a turn, something new, and it adds to my toolbox. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, that's mind-blowing. Why didn't I know that before on this last deal, right?
Right. Excellent. And I remember how you told the story that when you and I first met, and I asked you a few questions about your real estate, and you said you didn't know the answers to. And then I remember you told me that for, what was it, like the next 3 or 4 months, 5 months?
Yeah, for 4 months, man, I dug in 6 hours a day and 11 hours on weekends.
And just studying, learning, understanding what real estate was about, number 1, and understanding how money worked in that real estate space. So again, you should never invest in anything you do not understand. I was just talking to one of the people that I work with at the office, and she's very interested in getting into real estate, into investing. And that's the first thing I told her, though. I said, you know what? I said, the first thing you want to do is educate yourself. understand what real estate is, how it works, how to invest into it. I go, and it might take you 2, 3, 4, 5 months, 6 months, whatever it takes you, but understand it before you get into it. Any other thoughts on that?
I do have something to add to that.
Okay, good.
I think that's a great idea and ideal, but I do think that it is just as important to go and do it. Yes. Even if it's a mistake initially, meaning a mistake as in you're gonna not make as much money as you thought you should have or could have, but the actual practical experience, it's so important. And that brings even more clarity to everything that you study.
Yeah, excellent point. And here's the bottom line, folks. So Sam and I have been doing this for a few years now, and we follow a lot of people that have been doing it for many more years than we have. And you learn a lot. You learn best when you do, and you still make mistakes. And that's okay, because that's when you really do learn. And you learn, you know what, that ain't happening again. I'm not going to make that mistake again. But you're absolutely right. By actually pulling the trigger on properties, and again, I really believe you have to kind of understand what you're doing first. But as soon as you can, pull the trigger on a property, because all of a sudden, there are a lot of things that happen in the negotiation, in the escrow period, in the due diligence period, that nobody tells you about, or it hasn't been mentioned in any book that you'll read or any podcast that you'll listen to, that will happen to you and that will teach you. So
no, I agree. Yeah, I've hit a lot of roadblocks, a lot of surprises, but from each lesson, the next one got easier.
Absolutely. Okay, so that's point number one. Number two, as far as understanding the deal, you have to know what the risks are, and you have to know what are the right questions. So I will say that the biggest risk in real estate is that everything blows up and you lose your money, all of it, So you have to know what the risks are. But what I like about real estate is that there are a lot of things that will mitigate risk and bring that risk down. So what are your thoughts on that right there, as far as knowing what the risks are and what are the right questions to ask?
I think with any investment, you need to understand it so you know what the risks are and if you can handle that risk. But like you said, with real estate, there's things that mitigate. In essence, real estate, it's tangible.
Yes.
So not only is it tangible, you have full control because it's yours. So because you have full control, you technically control the risk. It's not like buying a stock and the company directors and boards are the one controlling the future of that stock or that company, where you have no control over. You are your own company. You have that real estate in your hands. You can control its value to a degree by making repairs to it, making it nice, bringing up the value through bringing up the rents, or whatever the case may be, making it more desirable, essentially. So that's all on you. The only risks that you have no control over are basically risks of nature hazards, like a windstorm or a hurricane. Because even with tenants who are foolish enough to hurt themselves, insurance covers it. So there's no risk there. People forget that.
Absolutely. And then it's also, as far as the risks are concerned, as far as when it comes to losing money, just remember, when you buy property as an investment, you're more often than not, you're using other people's money. So you're not using your own money. You're not putting your own, at least not a big chunk of it. You have to put down 20, 25, maybe sometimes 30%, but you're not putting down 100%. So that's number one. Another mitigating factor, someone else is paying the rent or the mortgage, because the rents that you collect pay for the mortgage, so it's not your money. Another thing that happens that mitigates risk. Real estate has some of these wonderful accounting rules, specifically dealing with depreciation. And that, again, when it comes time to tax time and doing the taxes, you're paying very little, if any, in taxes because of the depreciation. So, and I know you and I were just talking about a deal, a kind of a tough deal that you've been working on, that you said, well, you know what, if nothing else, I've got that depreciation that's at the end of the year is going to really help me. A mitigating factor. So lots of things that come into play with knowing what the risks are, and then knowing what are the right questions, knowing what to ask your real estate agent, knowing what to ask your lender, knowing what to ask your insurance guy. Who else would we be working with besides those folks?
Your title companies, make sure
Your title.
you ask the right questions, because even though it is the title company's responsibility to make sure it's free and clear of any encumbrances, sometimes they miss stuff. You got to
Yeah,
ask. You got to ask
absolutely.
your agent to ask the seller, because some sellers, they're not dishonest, but they may withhold information that's important to your decision making purposefully or unintentionally. You just got to ask.
Absolutely. And then property management companies, when you
Yeah.
work with them, you got to know what questions to ask. So that's kind of the type of information you have to know. Next point, if you're going to partner up with somebody, because a lot of times when you go into the investment field, you go from buying, let's say, and here in Southern California, of course, numbers are kind of really crazy. You could go and buy a single family home for $800,000, and that's just a single family home. But if you want to get into the multi-units, commercial field, multiple units, now you're jumping up to 1.5 to maybe $3 million. And you may have to partner up with somebody to be able to get through that deal. And hopefully you're partnering up with someone that knows what they're doing. One of the big reasons that I love working with Sam is because he has some very serious strengths in that field. I have my other strengths. We're able to come together and talk a lot about what's going on, what works, what doesn't work, what's confusing, what's missing, and what we're doing. Just not too long ago, Sam had his spreadsheets and said, "Serge, look at them. Tell me if I'm missing something. Tell me if it doesn't look good for you." So be able to bounce those ideas off of each other, I think is a great advantage. Any thoughts on that, Sam?
Oh, no, that's it. I mean, just like knowing what you're doing with the investment, know that this is a partner that you can trust, that if you don't know someone to a degree that you can trust someone with your money, then you shouldn't be partnering up with them, period. And that should be with anything, right? Because that partner is also your investment. So if you don't know your investment, you don't know your partner, don't invest.
Exactly. So that, what does that mean? That means that you have to meet people, build relationships, get to know them, get to build trust, and then actually hopefully go into a deal with them. So excellent. So then the other point, part of understanding the deal, knowing what the end goal is. And you and I talked a lot about this, Sam. Is the end goal cash flow or capital gains? So what's better, cash flow or capital gains? You tell me.
Yeah, that may be a long topic for a discussion for another day. But
Right.
what is your personal individual goal in real estate? Are you trying to grow, or are you just trying to substitute your W-2 and get off that treadmill, right? So that's the difference. You will never get wealthy off of cash flow, period. You can get rich, you can leave work or subsidize your retirement, but you'll never get wealthy. Wealthy comes from those capital gain factors, because it allows you to translate and transfer that money into something bigger with leverage, and that's something we'll talk about next time. But cash flow, it's slow. I'll give you some numbers. If the average person needs $50,000 to live, you can easily achieve $50,000 of cash flow. But $50,000 of cash flow is not going to get you very far. And if it grows only at 5 to 10% per year based on rent increases, 5, 10, 20 years from now, you're not going to get very far. However, the gains that come from appreciation, the capital gains, that's different. And that formula has to do with leverage, what you had mentioned earlier, because the gains is on the entire amount. And if that goes up 5% a year, that's 5% a year of the entire value, not your rents. And so therefore, that's where wealth is built. What is your goal? That's it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we're going to have to do a whole podcast just on that right there, because you're absolutely right. There's a lot to talk about. And a lot of it just depends on where you are in life, what your goals are, as you said, Sam. And, maybe you're in a position of where you need the cash flow, you want the cash flow. So you might have to give up a little bit about the appreciation, or vice versa. Maybe you're in a position where you're okay with the cash, but you do really want to build that generational wealth.
Well, I'll tell you this. What I've come to learn is age has a lot to do with it.
Yes.
And whether you like it or not, the difference is as you get older and you get in the game later, you should technically reach closer for cash flow. All you care about is that money coming in to subsidize your lifestyle, because you don't have that much time. because real estate is a get wealth slowly game, you should play that appreciation game early if you're starting younger, because you have more time for it to compound. If you're starting older, you just don't have the time. So in that case, focus on the cash flow. That way you can enjoy your life. When you're younger, you have more runway to make mistakes and pick up a side job if you can't support yourself with the cash flow. But the acquisition of stuff over time will compound to wealth. And that's kind of like the hard thing that we might have to put a whole video just to talk about that. But that's the difference. If you're older, go for the cash flow. If you're younger, bite your tongue for a minute on cash flow and stick to the gains, and it'll pay you. And look at these investments not in months or years. Look at it in decades. Count yourself every 5 to 10 years and see, okay, where can my goalpost move in 10 years? That's how I look at it.
Great point. And you know what? And that's what's interesting about Sam and I and our partnership, in that Sam is in his, I don't know, mid-40s or so. I'm in, my upper 60s actually. And so there's a gap there. But what makes it interesting here is that Sam does look a lot at the appreciation side of it. I do look a lot at the cash flow side of it. And then bring those two perspectives together really creates a lot of good discussion, a lot of good learning for both of us, and the ability to make better decisions when we're going to make an investment. So absolutely. Okay. And then the last point on understanding the deal is, can you afford to lose the money? Now, no one gets into real estate to lose money, right? But why would we say, can you afford to lose the money? Why would we say that, Sam?
Because if you can't afford to lose that money for whatever reason, you shouldn't be investing. Because the ultimate risk of all of it is you could lose everything through some unforeseen circumstance. And if you losing that money that you invested will ruin your life, don't do it. In fact, don't do anything that's going to ruin your life. It doesn't matter what the investment is. But if you can't stand to lose that money and it's going to ruin you, I would not do it. I would tell you, don't do it. For example, if you're living check to check and you've got a $30,000 nest egg and you dip into it fairly often, but you replenish it. However, if you couldn't dip into it at any moment in a given time, you'd lose everything you hold dear. That means that you cannot stand to lose that nest egg. Don't invest that money. Save a different pot until you can get there. Don't do it. Right? At the end of the day, it's about your personal livelihood right now. As much as we say, hey, look at this at 5, 10 years, it doesn't mean to ruin your life right now. And before I forget, the other side of it is not just what I spoke about directly with the money, but if you're in a relationship and your significant other can't stand the thought or the sight of losing that money, don't do it. Because what's worse than anything in the world, right? Going to bed angry. Don't get your spouse angry at you, because you'll lose more hair than you can count, and it's not worth the millions you think you're going to make. It just isn't. And you have to accept that if you want your relationship to work. And at the end of the day, my philosophy is this. At the end of the day, your money's not going to wipe your butt when you can't do it. Your significant other will. So take care of that person first.
Absolutely. Period. Yeah. And you know what? And it's true you're absolutely right. In any investment, whether you want to invest in the stock market, in real estate, or, gold, or some other Bitcoin or whatever, disposable income is the name of the game. So, you know what? If you've got only 30,000, okay, well, that's your emergency fund. Figure out how to put together another 30, 50, 75,000 to get started, and it might take you a little while. And there are other ways to do it. You don't have to come up with all the money. You can partner up. You can do a lot of sweat equity. You just have to be really focused and want to make it happen. And you can, and you will. Okay, so those are like the 5 points for understanding the deal. Now let's talk about leverage, and because we've kind of touched on it a little bit. So what are some of the advantages with leverage? Well, number one, you can do more with less. With that said, explain a little bit about what leverage actually really is, Sam. What is it when you're leveraging? What does that mean?
Yeah, so leveraging in the real estate sense is basically using other people's resources for your own gain. It could be monetary, it could be physical, it could be work hours, it could be anything, but basically using someone else's belongings, their time, their effort, their sweat, their money for your personal gain. You're leveraging it, right? And you leverage it just like anything else. There's a fulcrum point, meaning there's a point where you feel that, okay, I'm at 20% of this bar, at 30% of this bar. It had just enough power on my end. There's enough weight on my end based on my influence or my monetary value that I can lift the other 70 or 80% of that bar to way more than what I could do by myself. So basically that's leverage.
Excellent. So that brings to point number two. You can leverage a bunch of different things. So most of the time people are thinking about leverage. They're thinking money. How can I leverage my money? And one great way, again, is to use other people's money. Other people's money obviously includes going to lenders, whether they are institutional lenders, private lenders, all kinds of different types of lenders. So that's one thing that's one way to use leverage. But another is to use to leverage time and to use people, to leverage people. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you have leveraged people, Sam? What have you done?
Well, I got to be careful. I don't want to say I'm using people.
No, you leverage people.
I'm leveraging labor, basically.
Yes.
I'm leveraging labor. And so what I did was, kind of like a property management company, I just created my own team. And with my own team, as I teach them and as I feel that they can take on more, I pay them more. So now I am getting my time back. I'm leveraging the people's energy and labors out there in the field to do all the work that I would be doing myself. I just have to see, is it worth the value that they're providing? In essence, can $500 per month out of my gross rents be worth me freeing up my entire month of dealing with 14 units? If it is, then great. I just cleared 14 units off of my duties, and then another, let's say 20 units. Can $600 a month pay the folks enough that they're willing to take on all the duties to manage another 20 units? And if it is, great. So as long as you understand that part of leverage, not to the point where it's detrimental to your profits, but as long as your time is worth it, then I would do it. I have learned now, unlike when I first started, that I would rather pay someone even at a higher rate than normal to get my time back, because as you get into the business longer, you will realize that the time in which you put in the thought process, the processing of deals, is worth more than the time you're going to go and fix a toilet or call a plumber. Even let other people call for you.
Right. Another form of leverage, again, when you leverage it would be like leveraging the knowledge of people. So, you and I both work with lenders, we work with real estate agents, we work with property managers. I know that I like to do a lot of my work out of state. And so I'm working with real estate agents that know a particular market. So I'm leveraging their knowledge. Again, you talked about property managers, same sort of thing for me as for you. I work with property managers out of state that save me tons of time and effort, because otherwise I'd probably have to be flying out to these properties to handle issues. And I'm not even talking about fixing toilets and stuff like that, because you can just call a plumber or something like that. But sometimes you have legal issues. Sometimes you have to there might be zoning issues that you have to deal with or something. And if you've got a good property manager that knows what they're doing, you're leveraging their knowledge, their skills, and their experience. So leverage is a great tool.
Oh, yeah. I did that today. In fact, this afternoon I went out to a property that I'm going to close on. And I went to meet with everybody, and I had the team that I told you about. Mm-hmm. So today was kind of on-the-job training. I put everybody in uniform, and it's funny because I feel bad for the tenants. It looked like an army came to their door because everybody had the same uniform with the same company name, blue collared shirts, and everybody had papers in their hands. I did 99.900% of the work, but I did it in order to train the folks, to kind of show them how to approach people in this part of the transaction. And what that does for me is, at this point, now I feel confident that they've experienced it, they know how to do it. I can leverage that in the future, and I don't have to waste my time to go and do it anymore.
Excellent. Next point about leveraging, understanding the difference between good debt and bad debt. And I think that even if you're not in real estate, you have to understand that difference, because sometimes people get caught up with a lot of bad debt, credit card debt, maybe car loans that are way too high, maybe other personal debt. So that's bad debt, okay?
Yeah.
What would be examples of good debt?
Well, besides a mortgage on an investment property, a HELOC used specifically to invest, that's good debt. Credit card debt can be good debt if you control yourself and know that the money from credit card is basically a stopgap for investing. You're using that money to invest into something as a stopgap, knowing that money will be coming in, but you need to plug in the hole right now and it'll be paid off the next month where you don't incur interest. That would be good debt, but not for frivolous things like brand new jeans or a pair of shoes. That's not good debt. Don't get me wrong. If you need to buy a nice suit to go to a meeting or something in order to present yourself, that's still good debt. That's a good investment debt.
So I would say that credit cards, and I appreciate what you just said right now, because how you use a credit card doesn't have to be bad. What is bad is when you use the credit card and you take it to its limit and you don't, and all you're doing is just paying off the minimum.
Yeah.
So someone gives you a credit card with $10,000, $15,000 of credit, you run it to the limit, and then you're paying off, $75 a month, and it's going to take you 15 years to pay off those $10,000.
Yeah.
And also, instead of paying off $10,000, you're probably paying off close to $20,000 or $25,000 when it's all said and done. But you're absolutely right. If you use it as a tool, like we would use any other tool. I mean, I use my credit card for real estate all the time. I'll get a call from my property manager and says, hey, we have this issue, whether it's a toilet or a window that has to be repaired or an air conditioner, whatever it is, right? I pay with it with my credit card, but that same month, that credit card gets zeroed out. So it's just a way to, it's just another tool to be able to manage the properties effectively. Yeah. So
it comes down to assets and liabilities, the basics, right?
Yes.
If you're using the money or the debt to buy an asset, meaning something that's going to provide you with fruitfulness, that's good debt. If you're going to buy something that's a liability, meaning it can cause you harm, it can cause you to lose monetary value, it can cause you headaches, that's bad debt. It's simple.
Absolutely. And then the last point on leverage is that when you use leverage, you can actually make it so that you get paid multiple times. And what I mean by that is that, let's just say you're fortunate enough to have, let's say, $500,000. So you could take $500,000 and drop it on one property. And really, you could probably pick up about a $2 million property with $500,000. So that would be actually not too bad. But if you want to mitigate your risk, if you want to spread out that risk, maybe what you may want to do is take 100,000 and drop it each into a 5 different properties, right? Because now you're putting a down payment. So maybe you're not buying that $2 million property. Maybe you're buying smaller properties, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 probably, and you're mitigating your risk. But now you're creating different income streams of money coming in, so you get paid from multiple locations. Thoughts on that?
I think that's an excellent idea. It diversifies your income stream, and also what happens is it's not all locked up into one area or one building. And sometimes you don't have control of the changes that occur in an area, which may downgrade or devaluate that area's holdings, but the other area can sustain itself. If you bought a 20-unit building, it sounds great with $500,000, but if that area goes down in value, right, and it becomes undesirable, then you can have a problem. But instead, if you bought 5 buildings or 5 houses, all with $100,000 each, it can prop itself up, and you have a more stable income, is basically what I'm saying.
So a lot of it just depends on the deal itself.
Yeah.
Because don't think like what we're saying is that we wouldn't want to buy a 20-unit apartment, because we'd love to do that, right?
Yeah.
Who wouldn't? But you have to also know what your overall investment plan is. understand where you're at. Again, understanding how money and real estate works, the leverage and everything. So good. Okay, so we covered a lot of points, a lot of information here in just a short period of time, dealing with understanding the deal and then how to use leverage. Next week, we'll be talking about compounding and the magic of that. We'll talk more about diversification, and then we'll talk about, do we hold on to properties or do we turn over properties quickly? So so please join us next week when we talk about that. Any final words of encouragement for our friends out there, Sam?
Yeah, no, all I can say is it is an awesome time to invest. Don't let numbers and fear tactics from the media scare you. Jump on in. You know what? You'll learn more jumping in than you will reading. So I think that right now or anytime is the time to invest. And it comes back to if I can do it, anybody can do it.